The following story, appropriately entitled Rosh Hashana and Berditchev, is one of the family's favorite stories, and I've been asked to repeat it over for everyone to have for posterity. The central figure, of course, is Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Tzchutzchi Yogen Aleinu. It was the first day of Rosh Hashana in the shul in Berditchev by the Rebbe, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak. It was crowded. The Rebbe himself was at the Amid, leading the tefillos in this most solemn of days. All declare your majesty, Hashem, who sits in judgment. Kel Orech Din, the famous piyut that we say. The rabbi's soft and vibrant voice touched the heartstrings of every mispalel. Hardly anyone's eyes were dry. From the women's gallery, many a sob burst forth, loud enough to send the tears rolling down every face. To he who searches the hearts, B'yom Hadin. As the Rebbe pronounced the words, his voice broke. Everyone's heart was filled with teshuva. Everyone pictures himself standing before the Kisei HaKavod, where the judge of the entire universe presided to dispense judgment and pronounce the verdict. Be merciful and gracious to us, was the inaudible plea coming from the innermost recess of every heart. The rabbi recited line after line of this tefillah, while the congregation repeated it until he came to the line, Kaina Avodav Badin. Here the rabbi suddenly paused. The words died on his lips. His talus slipped from his head, and everyone could see his pale face. His eyes were shut. He seemed to be in a trance. A shudder passed through the entire Kehillah. Something was amiss. A critical situation must have arisen in the Beis Shamayla. Things didn't appear to be going well. The prosecution was apparently on the verge of triumph. Only tefillah and teshuvah could change the ominous verdict. The whole Kehillah held its breath and waited with palpitations. A few moments later, the rabbi suddenly came to. The color returned to his face, which now became radiant with joy. His voice shook with ecstasy and triumph as he recited, to he who requires his servants Badin, the Kaina Avodav Badin. After the tefillah, when the Rebbe was sitting at his festive table surrounded by all of his Hasidim, one of the elders plucked up the courage to inquire of the Rebbe as to what caused the interruption in his tefillah, and why precisely at those words. Rabbi Yitzchak began to relate. I felt myself lifted up to the Sharei Shamayim. I saw the Sultan carrying a heavy load. The sight filled me with anxiety, for I knew that the Talmudic one was carrying a bag full of averos to put on the scales of justice before the Beis Din. Suddenly, the Sultan put the bag down and hastened down in a downward swoop. No doubt, to pick up yet another avera committed by some hapless Jew on this very solemn day. The bag, having been left unattended, I went up to it, began to examine its contents, filled with all kinds of averas, lashon hara, sinas chinam, kina, bitul zman, which should have been set aside for the study of Torah, tefillah without kavana, on and on and on, ugly creatures of averas, big and small. While I was wondering what to do, I knew that even at this very moment, the one with 1,000 eyes had yet spied another sin, and would soon bring it gleefully to put into his bag. Dear me, I thought, things don't look too good at all. I pushed my hand into the bag and began pulling out one avera after the other to look at it more closely. I saw that almost all the averos were done without kavana, without any hana, with just carelessness, or out of amratzis. No Jew is really bad, but the circumstances of galus, anios, poverty, and averis, and hardship sometimes harden a Jew's heart, set his nerves on edge, bring along petty jealousy, and the like. Strangely enough, as I was examining all these averas and thinking about what was really behind them, they seemed to start to melt away, one by one. until hardly anything was left in the bag. The bag dropped down back, limp and empty. The next moment I heard a terrible cry. The Sultan was back. He had discovered what I had done. He was filled with anger and consternation. Ganef, what have you done with my wonderful Averas? He grabbed my beard and pace. He yelled, "You're a Ganef! All year I labored to gather these precious sins. You have stolen them? You have to pay kefel. You have to pay me back double." "How can I pay you?" I pleaded. "My sins may be many, but not that many." "Well, you know the law." The Sultan countered, "Whoever steals has to pay back double. If he's unable to pay, you have to sell him into servitude. You have to become my Eved. You are my Eved now. Come." The thought of being Sultan's slave chilled my blood. I was ready to collapse. Finally, my captor brought me before the Kisei HaKavod and pleaded his case before the supreme judge of the universe. After listening to the Sultan's complaint, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, "I will buy him. As I promised to my Navi Yeshayahu, at Seva, I will be the same. When he is gray-headed, I will sustain him. I have made him, I will bear him." It's the famous Altir Mipacha Pisoim. I will sustain and save him. At that point I came to, concluded the Berditchev. Now I understood the meaning of the words, HaKoina Avadav Badin. We are the Avdei Hashem. And if we are faithful, Hashem protects us and will be our master. Let us remain faithful servants only to Hashem. We'll be spared from becoming servants of servants. And in the merit of this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should write us all in a Sefer HaChaim, a Ksiva v'chasim toiva.